Hi guys, welcome to ZigWheels, and today we have with us a pure rebel. This motorcycle here is a middle finger to sanity. Yes, this is the Triumph Scrambler 1200 XC. Well, Triumph have the Street Scrambler in their lineup, but this is possibly the most hardcore and the most gorgeous scrambler in the modern era. So let's start scrambling. A proper scrambler is meant to take the beating, and as you can see, we've had a load of fun, and the Scrambler 1200, it has taken the beating and it has survived. Well, Triumph has an adventure bike in its lineup in the form of the Tiger 800, but when you want to take it off-road, it feels a bit too top heavy, and that means it is a bit unnerving for newer upcoming riders. Whereas for this, well, the mass is centralized fairly around here and it is not as bulky. It is a lot more easy to handle when you're going over rocks, you're crossing streams, or doing those crazy jumps. Well, also the thing that helps the Scrambler is its upright riding posture. The seat height, well, it is equal to the Tiger 800 XCX, but the seat is narrow, the tank is narrow, so when you're sitting over here, it is much more easier to reach the floor. Even shorter riders who are 5'5", 5'6", well, they'll be able to reach their feet much more easier on this bike than on the Tiger. This will definitely come in handy when you're tiptoeing through streams, negotiating those rocks, and yeah, this is a much more balanced and upright riding stance. Well, I am not particularly impressed with the stock tuning of these front Showa USDs. Triumph wants to pitch this as a dual-purpose bike, and hence it has got to do its on-road duties as good as its off-road duties. And well, where they set out to find a balance, it became a bit too stiff, and hence it is a bit bouncy when you're taking it off-road. But luckily, these USDs as well as the rear units are fully adjustable. That means you'll have to sit around tinkering with it to get just the right setting for you. Well, it is not as light on its feet as the Tiger despite it weighing the same, and that has got to do with the steering geometry. Triumph has revised the traditional bony frame for the Scrambler 1200, and that means it gets a different rake and trail. And in fact, it is longer than the Tiger. That means it tips in slower and takes a fair bit of effort to change directions. But it is still a hoot when you're going into corners and also when you're out in the trails. The braking units have been lifted straight off the Triumph Street Triple RS. Yes, the Scrambler 1200 gets Brembo M50 monoblock calipers, which we know are fantastic on road. So is it a wise decision to put it on the Scrambler? Well, yes, because Triumph has altered its braking capabilities, which makes it even good off-road. It gets enough bite and enough progression to enjoy your off-roading, and at the same time, it does not lack in its stopping power on road. But the most lovable thing about the Triumph Scrambler 1200 is not here in the brakes, or even in the suspension, or even in the way you sit on it or the way it rides. It's at the heart, and the heart of it is the same 1200cc Bonneville engine that you find on various other bikes such as the Thruxton R and the Bonnie T120. But this engine crucially comes in its own state of tune, which makes roughly 112 Newton meters. 100 Newton meters of it is available right at 2000 RPM. So you have loads of low down torque, and that means you can cross any form of obstacle with just a simple twist of the wrist. The problem with the Scrambler style exhaust setup is that this area, well, it tends to get heated up, and when you're standing on the pegs over here and you want to go off-roading, this area does get pretty hot, and that will scald your carbs. So you will need to invest in some proper off-roading textile pants as well as off-road boots. Well, we know that this engine comes loaded with electronic aids such as ride-by-wire, traction control, and 5 rider modes. Of them, one of which is the off-road mode. What it does is it still provides a very linear but a bottom-heavy torque curve, and it is highly beneficial when you're taking on the obstacles. Another thing which the off-road mode does is it changes the traction control setting to off-road, which allows a fair bit of slip, so you can slide it around a bit, but it is still a bit too intrusive. What I found best was to switch off traction control completely, even in this mode. And lastly, it gets off-road ABS in the very same mode, which disengages the off-road intervention on the rear wheel. You still have intervention on the front wheel, but you can lock the rear in case of an emergency. Well, we've established that it is great off-road, but does the fun continue when you take it out on tarmac? Let's find out. So we are back in the hotel from a long ride from Chandigarh, and now we are finally in Shimla, and we've had a fair share of tarmac activities. And let me tell you, the Scrambler 1200 XC is as much fun on the road as it is off-road. And I'm not just talking about touring. This bike is well capable in the corners. I'm sure it takes a bit of effort to tip the bike in, but once you get to the corners, oh my god, there's just a wide smile plastered all across your face. And then the brakes over here, well, the bite was a bit reduced for off-road usage, but it never feels you longing for more. So in that department, Triumph has found a well balance between on-road as well as off-road braking setup. And at 840mm, it is not too high, so even shorter riders, as I mentioned before, are able to get their feet down thanks to the tank's narrow dimensions. Because the parallel twin engine is so torquey, it is great for one-wheel shenanigans. But it is not just that. When you're out on the highway doing 100-120 kilometers per hour, it stays in the chunk of the power band that is roughly between 3 and 4000 RPM. So you're quite nicely relaxed on the highway. And if you do decide to whack the throttle open, well, there is a bit of a hammer punch delivered to you. This is not quite like the Tiger, which delivers a very linear power delivery, so you might just have to recalibrate your mental senses to anticipate for that hammer. And just in case you are wondering what this bike sounds like, well, rather than me putting it into words, why don't I just make you listen to it? What is an issue though is the exhaust, because it's the Scrambler style upswept exhaust. The heat from it will roast your right thigh, and this is especially a problem when you come at a standstill. So either you let it roast or you can just switch off the engine. But just how bad is it? Well, we'll have to check it out in a proper road test once we get the bike back in Pune. One of the great bits about the Scrambler 1200 XC is that it gets tubeless Metzeler 2-range dual purpose tires. Yes, you heard me right. It gets tubeless setup over here, because even though these are spoke wheels, the spokes are on the side walls, so that allows you to have a stress-free ride even in case of a puncture. Well, the grip levels are commendable off-road, but on the road we had chicken strips in millimeters. You can't see it now because we did a bit of off-roading later, but the grip levels are great. And when I said it looks gorgeous, to my eyes it does look beautiful. The styling is era specific, and when it comes to attention to detail, Triumph is the master at the game. The brushed aluminium finished parts look amazing, and although it comes in two colors, the green option is what we would go for, as it pays homage to its British roots. There are modern bits in the mix as well. The round headlamp is full LED lit, and so is the bulbous tail lamp and round indicators. The party piece of the Scrambler 1200 has got to be Triumph's second generation color TFT screen. Well, isn't it great to have a motorcycle that can greet you every single time that you ride it? Well, the Scrambler 1200 XC does that. The new screen has two themes and relays a whole lot of information on the go. It is the command center for the electronic aids, and it also has the hardware in place
for Bluetooth connectivity with turn-by-turn navigation, as well as the world's first motorcycle to get GoPro controllability. Both of these modules will be available as an accessory, and Triumph will be getting it out later on in 2019.
Well, there were a few speculations of what Triumph would price the bike at, but it has delivered a staggering pricing of rupees 10.73 lakhs. Well, that is just phenomenal value for money for the kit and the capabilities that you're getting from the bike. And the corresponding Tiger 800, the XCX variant, well, that is 3.5 lakh rupees more than this. So why would you want to get that bike if your intentions are primarily off-road with a little bit of on-road? Well, what do you think about the bike? Do let us know in the comment section below, and as always, like, share and subscribe to ZigWheels.